Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This is our 655 episode, and we will discuss have we become less happy in this age of technologies. We have our world famous speaker, Professor Edward, Dr. Talib, Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. Frank, and Professor Rob. First, I would like to give chance Professor Edward.
Well, thank you very much. And you're having this on a very special day. This is Human Achievement Day, October 21st. Um, this is this marks the anniversary of Thomas Edison perfecting the light bulb. He turned a light bulb on after 3,000 or 600,000 tries, and overnight he came back on October 21st, and it was still burning, meaning he discovered after all those tries the filament that would work. And so this is a very good day to recognize and appreciate human achievement. And so much of that achievement comes through technology. So, to the question of are we happier with technology, I would first of all say, who is the we that we're talking about here? Now, I certainly am. And I think that anybody who understands human nature and themselves would be very, very happy. First of all, what is technology? Technology is something that is created by human beings so that we can take control of nature and our own lives. I want to show you a piece of technology right now to your audience. Right here. Look at this. This is technology. It's called a hammer. Now, hammers, of course, can be used to build houses and to build many things. It can also be used to hit someone in the head with. That's not a good thing to use with a hammer for. But have hammers, have wheels, have all of these things that have been developed over the millennia made us happier? And of course, the answer is yes, if we have the right values. Because here's the thing. Technology allows us to take control of our own lives and our own nature. But technology is something that we have to create using our rational minds. In a sense, before we can take control of our environment, we have to take control of ourselves. We have to practice the virtues of rationality, of purpose, of self-esteem, of fortitude, of honesty, of integrity. And with these kinds of virtues, then we can use our innovation, our innovative minds to come up with things like the hammer, like the wheel, like the smartphone, like the technology that your audience, hi guys, hi girls, are listening to us right now. Okay. That is the wonder of technology. I wouldn't be able to have this wonderful discussion with all of the folks in the Asian Pacific area if without technology. And Sharif, I assume you agree that the folks who are listening to this broadcast are happier because they're being enlightened. Well, let us thank technology. Technology are tools, and technology is of value and can make us happier depending on the purpose for which they are used. Again, for building a house or hitting someone on the head. Obviously, the first purpose is a good one. The second purpose, not so. But I want to make another, what I think is a crucial point. We see, and unfortunately, we see a lot of this in the United States and in the West. You see a lot of people who are who are denouncing technology, who see it as going too far. And again, I think this is a failure of their own values. When we talk about we, if you don't appreciate technology, the problem is probably in you, not in the technology itself. And I think the problem is that we have a culture, unfortunately, in the United States, that's been growing over the decades of pessimism, of nihilism, of anger, of impotence, of despair, and of malevolence. A very, very negative culture of looking at everything and wanting to tear everything down. And of envy, by the way, envy being hatred of the good for being the good. Not envy in the sense of you hate someone because they steal or whatever, but you hate someone because they seem to be better than you because maybe they're an Elon Musk and produce a whole new industry. And I think this speaks to the need for a values revolution or a return to what I consider to be the fundamental values that make us most human and allow us to enjoy the lives that we all have. And that is to substitute for the culture I mentioned, to substitute um, uh, for um, uh, for pessimism. You substitute optimism. You have optimism. You have joy and achievement. You have purpose. You have empowerment. You have hope, and you have benevolence. That's the kind of world that we can have. And it's the kind of world that gives rise to these wonderful technologies. And that if we have those values, the future is going to be so incredible. It's going to dwarf the industrial revolution. To your folks listening today, and I know you've had many shows about this in the past. Medical technology, just to name one thing, is at really a takeoff point. You're seeing using CRISPR-Cas9, CAR-T, a lot of these editing tools, the possibility of doing away with cancer, of Alzheimer's, which my mother is afflicted with, unfortunately. All of these sorts of diseases. Sickle cell anemia is a disease that mostly afflicts African Americans and blacks, and it looks like we now have a way to abolish that, to get rid of it. That's what technology can do. If you're not happy with this kind of world that we're creating now, that we can create in the future, look at your own values. I assume that those of you listening in the Asian Pacific area, if you're listening to Sharif's show, you're probably already optimistic. You're probably already purpose driven. You probably already take joy in achievement. You probably already are empowered or trying to be empowered. You probably already have hope, and you're probably already benevolent if you're listening to this show right now. I want you to take those values. I want you to help create the technology. I want you to enjoy the technology, to look at how it can help you flourish and your friends flourish and your community flourish. So happy Human Achievement Day. Be optimistic. Push out all that negativity that you see coming out, especially of the West, and go for it, folks.
Excellent, Professor Edward. Now I request Dr. Talib.
Thank you. Thank you for making Edward speak first, because what he said is absolutely consistent with what I want to say. Technology is there to serve mankind. We could not live without technology. From the day the man invented fire, we had started to make technology. And until today, we're improving our technology. That's what we're doing now. So Edward is absolutely right. What we need to define here is, what does happiness mean? If happiness is just an emotional thing without thinking about it, then of course we're not happy with technology, especially the older generation like mine that can see the past as a better world because of technology. But the coming generations, the future generations, must not look at the technology that way at all, because the coming generations are the ones that are actually developing this technology and benefiting from it. So happiness is in the mind now, not in the heart, not in the soul, but in the mind. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Professor Edward. I agree with every word that you said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Talib. Mr. David Schumacher.
I not surprisingly agree with my two esteemed colleagues that have already spoken. But I wanted to get a different viewpoint. So I jumped out on the internet and started searching to see what people are writing and doing YouTube videos about as far as technology and happiness. And if I was to read those things, I would believe that we are in a much worse place because of technology. Okay, so there's much written about that out there. That sells for some reason, and I'm going to come to that point. But criticisms that I found out there are spending too much time on screens. So that speaks back to the nature of our relationships. An interesting criticism was that technology makes things too easy. It's too easy for us to do things. Therefore, we lose this notion of hard work and achievement and somehow technology is robbing us of that. That's not consistent with my own personal experience, nor is it consistent with the third point that I found out there, which is that new technology is constantly changing, and there's new types and new products that we have to learn and that we have to implement to get the benefits that we want. And using these doing this new implementation, learning something new is hard for us and makes us unhappy. I find that really odd myself, because I find exactly the opposite in my own personal experience, that yes, there is energy required into learning something new, and there's time required, but then I feel satisfied, fulfilled, and yes, happy after having done that. And then the internet's favorite whipping boy these days is social media, with Facebook in particular. We just love to drone on about the evils of the technology of social media. But as Edward's already pointed out, what about technology in the medical field? Look what that's done. And on a day-to-day basis, what about health tech? What about the things that we can do with wearables, for example, and so many other things that are in the health tech age that we can do that make the world a better place for us? So, as Edward pointed out, there are so many new things that are out there to be helpful. Why do we see them different? Now, here's a book that influenced me. Edward's fond of picking up books and showing people, so I wanted to pick this one up, because this one by Steven Pinker, and he has another one called Angels of Our Better Nature, takes this topic on and talks about how we feel that we are worse off because of maybe the news cycle or just the negative bias that seems built into the human mind. But when we take a rational, evidence-driven look at our progress, we see that we are constantly on the improvement. And late 20th century, early 21st century, that is increasing at an exponential rate. So if we're not happy with the improvements that we're making, maybe we need to look back at us and determine what makes me perfectly happy. Okay. So I did a little internet research on that as well. I wanted something more than my own ideas. And not too surprisingly, I found relationship. And that relationship is something that we need to manage both on screen and off screen. And it's about caring about each other, and it's about spending quality time with each other. But that time also needs to have a positive focus. If we sit around in a relationship and talk about how bad things are, that's probably not going to take us where we want to go. And then it's not just the mental and the emotional, but it's also the physical. Get up out of your chair. If you're spending too much time on that screen, put the chair down, take the dog for a walk, go for a jog in the park, go out and walk in the sunshine. And if you're in a place where there's trees, enjoy that too. Everyone's heard of, or most people have heard of, the endorphins that come from the runner's high. I mean, there's something physically built into our system that makes us happier as we move. And as we move, if we do it in groups, if we participate in a group that we have a cultural interest in, or dare say even a tribal interest in, then there's that combined group happiness that feeds off of each other. And I already mentioned about taking the dog for a walk. My pet makes me very happy, okay? Because that's also a form of relationship and a form of physical activity. Getting out there and volunteering is something that helps. Doing something outside yourself, okay? Not keeping yourself at the center of the universe. And then it's early in the morning here, but I'll speak of back to physical activity and emotional activity, and that's sexual activity. Sexual activity drives happiness as well. It's shown in studies to reduce anxiety and depression. And the entrepreneurial side of me says that there's even a positive correlation between the amount of money someone makes and the frequency of sex that they have. Just thinking about that. Now, I'm not sure which one's causal there, but I'm clearly in favor of that causal relationship. So, one last counterintuitive thing that I found that was out there that I tend to agree with is if you want to be happy, don't focus on being happy. Happiness is something that happens out of doing other things. When we strive to be happy, that striving then increases our cortisol functions and actually keeps us away from the goal that we're all about. So, concluding, I want to say that I'm happy to be in a country where, in our Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evidence that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, in one of our basic founding documents, we recognize happiness and we recognize that pursuit. But I already said, don't focus on getting it. So, how can I square that with that argument? So, I went back and looked at Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was influenced by John Locke of the 1600s, a century before him, who had first used that idea of pursuit of happiness as the foundation of individual liberty. So, what does that mean? John Locke defined the pursuit of happiness as doing something in your best long-term interest. In other words, it's not a daily focus of I've got to be happy. It's I'm going to make tomorrow better than today perpetually. So back to the question on technologies. Technology makes you happy. I think technology is neutral and it offers both benefits and drawbacks, as Edward showed with the hammer. So how we use that hammer, how we use our life, taking individual responsibility for my life, for my liberty, and my best long-term interest makes me happy. And I'm happy now to pass the baton, Sharif.
Thank you. Excellent discussion. I just want to share one story because today we are really happy. I'm not alone. We have a very big team in Bangladesh, in India. So we are organizing this Nikola Tesla Technology Conference. This is not important for us. Important story is that we communicate with 17,000 school of the grassroots level in South Asia. We touch every corner of South Asia, and you will be really, really happy that many political person, school chairman, entrepreneurs, they call us and they communicate with us, and they say they want to develop new school based on the philosophy of Nikola Tesla, based on this philosophy of World Talent Economy Forums, how we are discussing, how we are engaging with the people. It's actually 100. So this month from 28, our target is that in between this year, we will engage with 10,000 students. For me, happiness is contributing for the people, and especially developing nations. They really, really love technology. They really want to engage with technology. There are a lot of entrepreneurs, lot of people, they love to support our project. So I want to request our speakers, those who really love to contribute for human being, please join in our team. Come to Dhaka, engage in our office, engage with the grassroots level people, try to help them. I'm sure you will be part of the history and how we developing our ecosystem. Hopefully, in between few years, we can minimize the gap in between developed world and developing world. And I really, really want to give thanks the people, the speaker, who regularly communicate with World Talent Economy Forums, engage with World Talent Economy for us, support our project, and they said we have everything. We want to distribute our property, our resources for modern science, engineering, and technology, and that's why I believe that contribution for human being is most important, and that is our objective. Mr. Frank, what you want to share?
Yeah, thank you for having me. We find ourselves
Mute
at an
yourself,
interesting
please.
point in history. Today, today's day and age, we are the most interconnected society in human history, but we also find ourselves at a junction point of being one of the most loneliest societies in recorded history, in recorded memory. We our modern rise of social media has changed the way we interact with our communities and those people closest to us. There's a there's a disconnect between perception and reality that social media has driven. You know, it's people are more have been more focused on getting that short-term dopamine hit and presenting this picture perfect idealistic life, you know, posting the 50th picture as opposed to the first picture they took because it wasn't just right. And what that's doing, it's just driving that wedge further between perception and reality, and that's causing us to break down the connections that we used to have between us. It's it's I think it's driving a mass, almost not a depression, but definitely a downshift in mood and emotions people experience on a day-to-day basis. Uh, how do we fix it? You know, I think we got to get back to real connection and honesty. One of the most popular apps right now is Be Real. It was downloaded. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It was downloaded a record number of times more than TikTok among Gen Zers, and it's all it does is once a day it takes a photo of your front camera and your selfie camera at the same time, and it's just once a day, and it just shows exactly what you're doing right then and there. Like there's no time to put on the front or anything. It gives you very little warning, and that gives me hope because that having an app like that, just a meat and potatoes, but honest app like that, have being one of the most popular apps on the internet now, it shows that people have felt this disconnect and they're they're looking for something different. They're looking to make a change, which should give hope for a better tomorrow. You know, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the last 10 years or so, people have gotten, I don't want to say colder, but things have been more, there's more disconnect. Things have been more shut off on a human emotional level. And it's like the world has been pitting everybody against each other, and just this team mentality. I don't know if technology is the driver or if it's just our adaptation to, or if we're just slow to adapt to, if our psychology needs to catch up with the technology. It's because there's no doubt that being this interconnected is a great thing. You know, the world becomes a smaller place. Instead of seeing enemies, we see neighbors now, where we used to see enemies across borders and whatnot, you know, during the Cold War and before the internet. Now the whole world is just a one click away, and yeah, that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, we got to catch up with the raw human emotional intelligence side of it, and get back to actually being a more physically interconnected society again. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Professor Rob.
Well, it's kind of interesting. We've gone all the way through all our speakers to address the question of whether technology is making us happier. Not one speaker has used technology to determine through survey whether their premise is the case. The fact of the matter is, the General Social Survey has indicated that since 1988, happiness has declined, at least in the United States. You can connect that to the rise of technology. The underlying mechanism isn't the fact that technology is inherently good or evil, but it's how we deal with perceptions. The example I had in terms of determining happiness was the guy that comes home and he's bought a car, brand new car, really happy about it. got a good deal. It was on it was for $12,000. He got it for $10,000. He pulls it in his driveway. He's just happy. He's pleased. He's having the best of days. And his neighbor pulls in with a similar car, also very happy. And he asks his neighbor, "Well, what would you pay for your car, if I might ask?" And the neighbor says, "I paid $9,000 for it." Well, now he's very unhappy. What changed? Car didn't change. His experience didn't change. Simply because his neighbor, who might have been lying about the price he paid, told him a number that was below his. He's suddenly unhappy. And if we look out at how marketing generally works, marketing works by making you unhappy with something so that you buy something else to create happiness. And of course, buying things we all should know doesn't create happiness, but that's marketing's role in life, is to make us unhappy with whatever it is we have, and then try to convince us that the path to happiness is to buy whatever it is they're selling. That's particularly troubling in politics. In politics, the opposing party, whoever's out of power, goes to a great deal of expense to point out why you should be unhappy with the party that's in power, regardless of anything that they've done, because the party that's out of power wants to get in power, and the party switches positions, and the thing reoccurs. And so the more information you have flowing in, the more information that's coming in that's designed to make you, if you consume it, unhappy. And that's its purpose, because it's trying to use that unhappiness to manipulate your underlying behavior. It is clear that unhappy will motivate you to do things much better than happy does. It's the underlying concept of how you sell insurance. You sell insurance by convincing somebody a very remote event isn't remote at all. It's going to happen, and that you need to buy the insurance to prevent that event. By the way, I'm not against insurance. Insurance has a valid purpose, but the way you sell it is to make people concerned about things that really aren't on the horizon. Because if they really were on the horizon, the insurance would either be wicked expensive or you couldn't buy it in the first place. I mean, the time you really want to buy insurance is after a disaster, and of course, that's the one time you can't buy insurance, because it would make no sense to sell you a remedy for 10 cents on the dollar and then give you the full dollar to recover the damage that you had. If you look at how technology works to provide you with massive amounts of information, and you look at the motivation for people providing that information, give it to you negatively to convince you to do something you otherwise wouldn't do, you see the technology, to a large extent, at least the technology that we touch and feel, the smartphones, the browsers, the computers that access the internet, are constantly feeding us stuff that is making us unhappy. And what's changed is we're overwhelmed with it. Whether we're talking about real news or fake news, if you just simply watch the news service, how many happy stories do you feel good about, opposed to really disastrous stories that you feel bad about? In fact, if you watch a typical interview after a disaster, is the interviewer trying to make the person feel better, or are they trying to get the person to break down and cry on camera? In other words, making the person they're interviewing miserable, and by nature engaging the audience in that misery. And of course, that goes against happiness. I was watching NBC News, and I do every night. And at the end of their show, they actually make a point to do something that is just nice. This teacher did something nice for somebody else. This kind of the dessert is something that makes you feel good about what it is you just saw, as opposed to the rest of the program where you're watching people being brutalized in Ukraine, you're watching shootings, it's no wonder we're less happy. Our media is not conditioning us to be happy. It's conditioning us to be unhappy. And as I say, it's because when you're unhappy, you can be manipulated into doing things. So right now, the underlying issue with technology is not the technology itself, it's how it's being used. And it's being used in a fashion, at least with regard to media, that makes us increasingly unhappy. And that General Social Survey has indicated that since 1988, it's been incredibly successful because overall happiness has been declining. Now, in the end, how do you fight this individually? Well, first is recognizing that happiness is within your control. The happiness is a perception thing. If the news is driving you nuts, don't watch it. I mean, the thing is nobody's driving you to watch negative news. Yeah, you don't have to sit there, and Fox is particularly bad. But you don't have to sit there and watch Tucker Carlson every night and get enraged, you can watch something else. I mean, hell, watch kids cartoons you grew up with, or pick up a good book. If what you're doing is making you unhappy, stop doing it. I guess I was reminded of the woman that goes into the doctor and she says, it really hurts when I do this, and the doctor says, well, then don't do that. That's kind of the thing with regard to happiness. Monitor your behavior during the day. Capture the things that you really enjoy. Maybe it's working in the yard, maybe it's walking the dogs, those things that bring a smile to your face. Do more of those, and monitor things that make you miserable. Maybe watching the news makes you miserable. Maybe talking to your neighbor who's out of control makes you miserable. Do less of that. And regardless of technology, you will invariably be happier. But you won't get there unless first you monitor your behavior and determine what is causing you. I shouldn't say making you, because I said you're in charge of your own happiness. But what is causing you to be happier, and what is causing you not to be, and then change your behavior to optimize against the event that you want to occur. And if you want to be happy, then focus on those happy things. I'll give you one more experience. And I bring this up a lot. The father of the guy I grew up with, best friend's father, used to go out, and he won and lost a number of fortunes over his life. An amazing guy to watch. But he used to when he traveled, he would go and go to restaurants in small cities, mom and pop restaurants. And then he shut them down. He said, listen, how much would it cost me to basically buy the restaurant for the night? And they'd tell him, and it wouldn't be a ton of money because it's a small place. And so he'd buy the restaurant for the night. And he said, I want you to serve us dinner, but I want you to have dinner with us. So he'd sit down with the family that owned the restaurant, paying for their dinner, and he'd just chat with them. And what he discovered over time was a lot of these small places, they're not, they're living on the ragged edge of the economy. They're getting by, but the family's close. They seem to be relatively happy, as opposed to his own life, which was full of turmoil of money in, money out, relatives coming after him for money, all the drama that wealth tends to bring. These families that didn't have that wealth were surprisingly quite a bit happier than he was. And at the end of his life, his wealth was pretty much gone. And I think he was the happiest I'd ever seen him. He got up every day. He gone back to owning the one motel. He worked in the motel office. He cooked, and he worked out every day. He was in great shape up to the day he died. And he was a lot happier than he was when he was trying to run 3 businesses and keeping everybody in line. So in the end, what he learned was, hey, money doesn't bring you happiness. Wealth doesn't bring you happiness. Things don't bring you happiness. What will bring you happiness is you. And that means that you really have to be able to determine what things bring you happiness, so that you can focus on those things, and what things that don't. And then you let those things pass. I mean, maybe you have relatives that really annoy the crap out of you. Well, you don't have to see them. So in the end, you're responsible for your happiness. Technology isn't. The surveys indicate technology is making it worse, but you're still in control. You can choose not to get on and doom scroll on the internet. Just don't do it. If it's making you unhappy, you're getting upset, and you're going to throw stuff at the screen, go out and work in the garden. Have fun. So we have gotten worse as technologies come to market. It's our fault. We can fix it.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Dr. Talib.
Thank you, Rob. I think Rob completed the cycle by saying that happiness is the thing we're discussing, not technology. It's happiness that matters, not the technology. And happiness is a very complicated thing. It's not something that we could easily discuss in an interview like this. But technology is there to stay. Whether we're happy or not, it's there to stay. The future generations are very technologically adapted. And I think Frank was the one that said that technology and happiness had to do also with the other factor, which is loneliness. Now, loneliness is a choice as well, because you don't have to be lonely. And people that use technology are not feeling lonely. Our children are not feeling lonely at all. They just feel different from us. We worry about them because we lived a different life. That's what we did. So instead of talking about happiness now, let's talk about technology. Technology is there to stay, whether we like it or not. This technology is going to be adaptive. and we can all live with technology, all generations. We wouldn't have been together today if this technology was not there. We wouldn't have been talking to each other if technology was not there. So it's not the fault of technology, it's our fault. Our fault because we are giving priority to loneliness versus happiness. I think that's Frank said. Now, loneliness is another thing that we, as an older generation, we can always discuss and talk about. But the future generation, the coming generation, our children, they're not like that at all. They have a choice to make, and they are making the choice. My children, for example, spend most of their life on the internet because the internet makes them happier, makes them less lonely. That's a fact. I can't change that. Nobody can change that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Professor Edward.
Well, this has been an excellent discussion, and I think everybody's contribution has been on the mark. A couple of things I will do to perhaps round it out is when we talk about happiness, I always go to my philosophical hero, Aristotle, who in his Ethics says that happiness is not a emotion, a hedonos or eidonos in Greek. It is an ergon. It's an energion. It's an energy or an activity of the soul. It's not. I feel this right now. If I pinch my hand, I'll go ouch. I feel pain. Or again, if I have a nice sip of coffee, oh, that's good. I get a happiness sensation. That's a feeling. But the Greek word for happiness is usually translated as flourishing. And the point being made that if you sort of focus on getting up in the morning and saying, well, what can I do to make myself happy? Well, in a sense, you're kind of missing the point. You have to do, as Dr. Khalib has wisely put it, you have to discover what is it, what activity, what goals, what purpose in life are going to allow you to flourish, are going to allow you to use your own gifts and develop even more your own gifts. I watch that in my children. By the way, Dr. Khalib, one of my children is a whiz on her iPad, and she actually keeps in touch with her friends that way, and she has discussions. I still would like her to go out and see her friends in person more often, but she's not disconnected. David, right here, I met David for the first time in person a week or two ago, but I felt like I knew David all along because for the last couple of years we've been on this show, we've been on the transhumanist salons and elsewhere, space policy forums. And so we interact, we talk, and I feel like I know this guy. Wow, I'm connected. He quotes all the same things that I quote, so I guess great minds work alike. But it's because of the technology that we're able to do this. So the point here is happiness is an activity of the soul. The Buddhists, I think, in many ways had it right. That you look inside of you. Aristotle had it right. If you cultivate in yourself the virtues of self-discipline, fortitude, rationality, and the like, then you're going to be happier because the whole activity of your life is going to be good, and you'll be able to achieve whatever it is that you like, or at least make a good effort at it and get joy out of it. I want to mention one other small point here, and Rob did a good job of talking about how, yes, surveys show that people are unhappy, and I think it's because they've disconnected from this underlying notion of happiness. And it's really not just a feeling that you get because you got a car and you got $10,000 off, and then you feel unhappy because the neighbor got it for $20,000 off. That's kind of silly, isn't it? Someone feel like that. The more and more we rely, for example, on politics and conflict. Politics is by definition conflict. It's one group trying to get the power of government to do something. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. We could debate about those issues, but that's what it's about. It's about conflict. It's about the use of power. And the more everything in your life is a political battle, I think the more you're going to have unhappiness. The more, as in Voltaire's excellent work, Candide, you tend your own garden and just on yourself in the good sense of the word, not disconnected from others, but involved with others, the more you're going to be flourishing and the more you're going to be able to achieve things. And again, to come back with technology, that's where technology is a tool that you can use or you can misuse. You can basically spend all your time focusing not on trends and so forth, but just something that's kind of trivial. So I think I just rounded off with this notion of happiness. Eudaimonia is an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue, and this seems to be a universal, going back whether it's Aristotle or Thomas Aquinas or Moses Maimonides or Averroes or Confucius, or you can go through all the great thinkers, and they all have these sort of insights about happiness. So to your audience, people who are listening to you right now in the Asia Pacific area, understand that happiness comes from within. Technology is a tool. Use it to your best. Use it so that you and your family and your friends and your world can flourish.
Thank you. Mr. David Schumacher.
Wow, great panel today. I want to thank each one of the constituents of this panel. Edward, I want to thank you for Human Achievement Day and reminding us of that. I think founding that on Edison's invention of the light bulb was brilliant, dare I say.
Of course.
Rob, thank you for what you talked about as far as if we understand our negative biases, if we understand manipulation, whether it be by the news or by politics, it's up to us to take control of that and not be passive about it and wallow in whatever comes along. And Frank, thank you for bringing loneliness into this conversation, because I'm not lonely when I'm with all of you. And I'm also not lonely when I'm doing face-to-face electronic conversations with my grandkids that live 300 miles away, 500 kilometers away. And then Susan's grandkids, they're in New Zealand. They're 7,000 miles away, 11,000 kilometers away. We get to see them a lot less. But through technology, we have these face-to-face discussions. And we have Snapchats that go back and forth where we're constantly in each other's lives. I don't have to be lonely for them the way perhaps it would have been in previous generations. And Talib, I hope you're still there, because I thought your summary of what we talked about was right on and perfect. So great panel today, great discussion, and I'm happy for my future, and I'm happy for everyone that wants a happy future. Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher. I want to give a special thanks Professor Nick Palveda. He is a chief of Pot Televisions. You know, we are partners, and they are promoting our session worldwide. So thank you, Professor Nick Palveda, you joining today, and we are discussing on have we become less happy in this age of technology. This is a little bit of philosophical aspects, but we get a lot of contribution. And I want to share with you, you know, that right now we are focusing with 300 million people, those who communicate with the same language, Bangla. And already we are like collaborating with 17,000 school, and there are a lot of things happening, especially we are trying to uplifting the community, the Bangladeshi, the Indians, the community. We are engaging with modern science, engineering, and technology. And I share with you the Nikola Tesla Technology Conference from White House to Bangladesh Prime Ministers, everyone joining. And hopefully your contribution and support will be very, very helpful for us. And especially it will inspire our community. Mr. Nick Palveda, what you want to share for our audience?
Well, thank you, Sharif. Yeah, actually, Sharif and I've been together doing this for about 2.5 years. I founded the Pod TV network, which this broadcast on about 2.5, 3 years ago. So this show broadcasts worldwide to 122 countries through Amazon Fire, through Roku, through Facebook groups, through LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and along with about 96 other shows that we have going on. The reason I tried to get on earlier, we have a show that broadcasts from Kyiv, Ukraine, called Russia, China, Ukraine. So I had to be on that show before I came on to this show. But as I told Sharif, the goal is to be in all the countries with various different languages, which given technology, if you wanted this technology make people happy, I would say yes, because there's so many things you can do with technology, including taking a show like this and translating it currently to 100 different languages, except for Bengali, because Sharif, the translator program that we have, doesn't do Bengali yet, but we do Malay. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things that we can do. So the Pod TV network has grown quite rapidly, and we intend to grow it even further. We're happy to have Dr. Sharif on and during the World Talent Economic Forum, and that does get broadcast. This program will be broadcast and rebroadcast many times here in the United States, as well as various other different countries that love to follow the conversation that you guys are talking about. And so I think we have a big opportunity, at least in media, to change the concept of media. For example, Netflix, which is worldwide, it's the same program over and over again. It's bleed, lead, done, and then let's do it again the next time, except have different actors on. So it's good to actually have shows like Pod TV where they're a little bit more educational than what we see on Netflix. Not that I'm beating up Netflix, they have their own space, or Amazon Prime, and I can't beat them up too bad because we broadcast through Amazon Fire. So politically, it's like you got to be kind of play nice in the sandbox with all your competition. But it's good to have the World Talent Economic Forum where people get to listen to smart television. We start off as the IBM TV network, but then IBM won their name not to be used in media. So now we're the Pod TV network. So what can you do? It's just a different change. So, and if you want to see the programming, on Roku, you just have to type in Pod TV and Pod TV Live, because this one is, I checked downstairs, it's being broadcast live throughout the United States on its own channel. Or you go to Amazon Fire and just tell Alexa, Alexa, Pod TV, quiet Alexa. And there it is, your World Talent Economic Forum. So technology is going to change a lot. I think in the next couple of years, the media is going to change, and the distribution of high-level content throughout the world is going to be a big revolutionary change, so that people will have access to good quality content. And if you do want to numb your mind and go watch Netflix, it's still available. It's not going to go anywhere, Sharif. You can always watch the Bleed and Leads, or you can watch some decent programming. It's up to you.
Thank you, Professor Nick, for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum, and you will be really happy. Central Bank of Bangladesh, with many banks already, they're utilizing our content for their training and development. And this year, Dhaka University, perhaps this is one of the largest university in Bangladesh, with 40,000 students. They are inviting all of our speakers to joining in the conference. Our Prime Minister, Central Bank, Stock Exchange Commissions, all of the corporation will join. So I want to invite you all. And not only the big capitals, even the grassroots levels, we engage with our this podcast, as well as we are taking initiative. We are developing research and innovation lab, and it creates a huge impact. And hopefully, when you visit Dhaka, when you visit India, because Gujarat also working with us, you will be really happy, and people really waiting for meet with all of you. So we have a lot of conference and activities. I want to invite you all, and especially if you really want to contribute for the people, come and join in our team. We need a lot of teachers, we need a lot of researchers, we need investors, but we have a lot of social entrepreneur in our team. Central Bank also supporting our projects. It's a social revolutions. Join with us. Professor Rob, what you want to share?
I'm back up. Okay, cool. Because I've got to go in about 3 minutes. When looking at overall happiness, one of the things is, as I mentioned before, is you want to focus on it, at least from the standpoint of understanding what makes you happy and unhappy. And where technology can help is you can do research on happiness. For instance, we should all know what the ranking of the happiest countries of the world are. I mean, at the very least, we should know it so that we can couch our own democratic actions against that particular metric. And if we go down the list of happiest countries, and it's kind of funny because Finland's number one, and I know we've mentioned this before, but Finland's a very dark place. I mean, when I say dark, I don't mean dark in terms of evil. I mean dark in terms of not a lot of sun. And so people shouldn't be happy. We know extended darkness tends to increase depression. It is a major negative in terms of happiness. We have one of the darkest places in the world, and it's also one of the happiness. In fact, we go down the list: Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Switzerland, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Sweden, Norway. We don't break out of that general vicinity until we get to number 9, which is Israel. And I went to Israel a month or so back, and my perception of Israel before going there was here's a place where missiles were coming all the time, residents were shooting each other, folks should be absolutely miserable. But it's a country that's surrounded on all sides but the ocean side. Landis hasn't attacked them yet, by people that want them to cease to exist. So you talk about a place that should be really relatively unhappy. It should be Israel, but it's ranked number 9 and well ahead of places that I thought would outrank them, like New Zealand. I mean, I honestly thought New Zealand would be the happiest place on earth. Somebody'd asked me. A beautiful location, and don't get me wrong, they're number 10, so it's certainly in the top 10. But the fact that Israel ranks ahead of them is just kind of amazing. But my experience is that constant threat forced people to be closer. In fact, it creates such a much deeper supportive structure that Intel is now using their Israel facility as the template for reforming the international culture of Intel, because Intel's Silicon Valley-based culture is let's just be clear, we were ranked companies in terms of hostile cultures for a long time. Intel would come up towards the top, though I think Zuckerberg has been doing a pretty good job of getting Facebook to try to pass them. Not a goal that I would suggest for any chief executive, by the way. So once you understand that there are certain behaviors in government types that make you happier, then you can either choose to move there, which one way to do it, or you can choose to drive those kinds of changes in your own government and environment. The United States ranks all the way down at 60, and after Canada, I already thought Canada was going to do a lot better than us, but it's only one place better than us. And Germany outranks us as well as number 14. But looking at Finland as kind of the gold standard, you've got a relatively young government. It's very focused on the care and feeding of its populace. The populace is very engaged with the government, far more than in most other countries, and the end result is in a happier environment. So if we know that, and we were to hold that up, and it seems like an obvious way to do this, just pick the country that's the happiest and use that as the template, and drive that in everybody else. And technology can help do that, and that would be the appropriate use of technology, both to do the analysis and then to drive the behavior that creates the result that you want. But as I mentioned earlier, that's not in the best interest of the powers that be. And until we fix that dynamic, that where the folks that control media and the folks that benefit from it are two different groups, I think we're going to continue to have a problem. With social media, you certainly can have that with Facebook as the less than gold standard. We've certainly seen that engagement, anger, hate drives eyeballs onto pages, and they've optimized against that, as many of the social platforms have. And the end result is it's been very lucrative, but it's done a ton of damage. And so it's those kinds of things we have to fix, but it starts with analysis. You start with analysis, then you build a premise. From that, you validate the premise. Then from that, you build a plan, and then you execute it. Technology can be marvelous to help you do that. Turn every country into a equivalent of a Finland, but it won't do that unless we first focus on the goal, analyze the path, and then execute against what it is we've discovered. And right now, technology is not being used in that way. It's being used to manipulate us. and not in the right direction. And so to fix that, if we were to fix that, I think we'd solve the underlying happiness problem with regard to technology at the moment. Then I've got to run because I have a meeting to go to.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Talib, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Okay, what I want to say is very simple. We're still talking about happiness, not about technology. All of us are talking about happiness. You know, technology is something else. The relationship, it's not there. It's not necessarily there, but it's something that we connect with because of the loneliness that Peter talked about, Frank talked about. Now, I think that technology is there to stay, whether we like it or not, whether our generation likes it or not. It's the future generations that matter, not us. Future generations are quite happy with technology, the current technology. Current technology is not different from the previous technologies. The only thing is it's happening at a faster rate. Now, every year we have something much more than in 10, 15, 20 years, 100 years used to happen before because of technology. We're developing now many, many things that are new to us. So once again, I want to emphasize the fact that happiness is not technology and that technology is there to stay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Professor Nick Palveda, what's your concluding remarks and what's your advice for developing nations?
I'm happy with technology, Sharif. I mean, the thing is, it's just like saying, would we be better off being in a cave? And also look at what's happened also with people. All you have to do is go to Bermuda, go to some of the countries. You know, Sharif, the average life expectancy prior to technology, just going back a couple hundred years, was 26. In other words, you're dead by the time you're 30. Seriously. What's this? Super abundance? Superabundance? Okay, right. Well, I like abundance. Okay. I like superabundance and I like being happy. And technology can actually drive all that. Finland is very interesting. You brought up Finland being the happiest place, et cetera. But remember, they have a very small amount of people. They have 5.6 million people. As opposed to the United States, we have 330 million people. So probably when you have a less concentration of people in a larger geographic area, and also probably more mobility, it ends up creating more happiness. So something we do have to look at, Dr. Sharif, is the wealth disparity that exists in countries like the United States, which continues, the Gini coefficient, which continues to be pretty poor, and in the United States, where people's mobility just doesn't exist as it did years ago, which can also, I believe, economics can drive happiness. They did a study here. What a study was real simple. People making over $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year in the United States, they were all happy. The people making less than $50,000 a year, half of them were miserable. So think, your economic circumstances will drive your happiness, Sharif. And my empirical analysis says the same thing. If you're making a lot of money and you're in this country, the great United States of America, you're going to be bloody happy. You're going to live well. Life is good. If you're poor and you're in the gig society, they have a whole gig economy out here, you ain't going to be happy. Okay, and that's just the reality of it. So and then Finland, they have a more flat system than we in the United States. The United States were very skewed toward the top end, to the point where when they did a study, they said, let's take all the people in the United States and divide the wealth equally. They did. Everybody would have $750,000. That's not the case here in the United States. You're either really rich, you're really happy, or really poor, and too bloody bad for you. And it continues going that way. And Wyoming, they did a study on that. Jackson Hole, Wyoming is a great example of the future of the United States. Rich people, all happy, a bunch of poor people, and we just summarily dismiss them.
Thank you. Professor Ed.
It's an interesting statistic here that I just came across the other day, is when you see these disparity indices in the United States, it's usually, well, the top 20%, have 16 times more wealth than the bottom 20%. But that's because they keep the statistics wrong going back to 1946. What the Census Bureau does is that they ignore for example, transfer payments, the fact that poor families get something like $30,000 or $40,000 in benefits with Medicaid, et cetera, and they don't take account of the fact that the top 20% have like a certain percentage of their income taken in taxes. There's actually a way they keep statistics. It's more like 4-to-1, by the way, just as a statistical fact. But the point you're making, of course, and I agree, is that certainly having money, being prosperous helps. And Sharif has heard me give this example before, that 15 years ago, nobody had a smartphone like this smartphone.
Mhm.
That 90% of the American population has this, giving us access to pretty much all the information in the world. You can talk to anyone, anywhere. I can talk to Sharif around the world. And if you put all of these capacities together, 1980s, this thing would cost $100 million,
Mhm.
and the machine would be 14 feet high that would contain all those capacities. So 90% of Americans have $100 million in their pocket. That's pretty cool. That's technology. And yeah, we want more of that. I want that in our healthcare system. I want that everywhere.
Yeah. And the
Thank
healthcare
you.
system in the United States also has its own issues. 20% of our GDP goes into healthcare. It's the highest in the world. You know, and
Which
that's
is why we need a
problem.
Steve Jobs of healthcare.
You do. Yeah, drive it on a more rational, and something that we talk every week with the somebody who's on our show every week is the former Comptroller General of the United States, David M. Walker. Yeah, he's on vacation now, and you met him, sure he's been on our show. And one problem that we bring up, which no politician brings up because they can't win the game, Social Security in the United States goes bankrupt by the end of this decade. Excuse me, by the end of next decade. Social Security, there won't be any. Medicare goes bankrupt by the end of this decade. Okay, so we have two systems here that we tell everybody on the IBM TV, Pod TV network. And we're warning them now. Your Social Security and Medicare will be bankrupt. It's mathematically, that's what's going to happen. Major media in the United States, which, by the way, used to be 90% of the major media were controlled by 50 companies. Today, 90% of media in the United States is controlled by 5 corporations. We'll not even talk about it. Politicians in the United States will not discuss it because they can't win the game. Unfortunately, it's a mathematical reality. Social Security and Medicare in the United States will be bankrupt in the next 5 to 10 years. So why don't they mention it? Well, let's appoint everybody here politicians. It's a math problem. Solve the problem. How are you going to make Social Security and Medicare more, financially sustainable? There's only 2 ways. Number 1, reduce the benefits. How are you going to get elected if you're going to tell everybody your benefits are going to be reduced? You can't. Number 2, raise taxes. How are you going to do that? Okay, and get elected? You can't. So because of that, the choice is to say nothing about Social Security and Medicare going bankrupt. And then I was telling people, I said, look, one solution is you can lift the cap. A lot of people don't even know what the cap is. So I said, well, once you make more than $147,500, you no longer pay into Social Security. And my employees looked at me funny, like, I didn't know that. And then I looked at them funny. I said, the reason why you didn't know it, you guys never made more than $147,000 a year in your life. So you don't even know that once I make more than that, I don't pay more Social Security taxes.
Yep.
They don't know. What is this? Sick care, you're born to get
Healthcare. Hey, Nick, your point, the thing that you're ignoring, and well, you probably aren't ignoring it, is that the way you get around this seeming dilemma is technology.
Yeah, of course.
And I have a whole thing on sick care to healthcare, how technology will bash that whole scenario. But you're right about the danger, and I'm sure that Sharif is going to do a future show on that. Right, Sharif?
Yeah. And is that your book you wrote on abundance or whatever that book is?
Oh, there's a whole thing called progress studies. Superabundance is by a friend of mine, Marian Tube at Cato, and it's very interesting because he does look at the statistics and about how technology, among other things, works. I know
you wouldn't believe it, but see back here, that's not a green screen. These are actual books. And the reason I don't pull this out is that there's another book actually behind it. Okay, they're double packed. And I don't ever want
This is the title. No, it keeps changing. Anyway, there we go. Take care to healthcare. This is for our future discussion about technology. There we go. Okay.
Sure. Okay, I want to see that. Oh, also,
This is a good discussion, Sharif.
speaking of books, Sharif got on one of his shows, Dr. Levy. Now, I'm a chess player. I was 3-time Florida State chess champion, USCF master in my young days. When I was in my 20s, I won, and I was number 10th in the country. There was 1,000 students in high school that played at the national championship in New York City. I was number 10. Okay, I wasn't number one. Number one is Fedoritz. He became a grandmaster. He got Dr. Levy on his show. I fell out of my chair because Dr. Levy wrote a book called The Sicilian Dragon. I have made so much money because I played competitive chess for money off his book. I want to know, Dr. Sharif, how did you get a hold of Dr. Levy? He's like, him and Dr. Nunn are two of the famous chess writers in the world. Seriously,
Yeah.
how did you get this guy?
Yeah, actually, World Talent Economy Forum, behind the scenes, 25,000 scientists, they're supporting our projects.
Right.
Because when I started this show with you, actually, first
Yeah.
you inspired me, because I find that 2017, December, my father died. I find our major problem is we don't have enough research, scientific advancement, or this kind of things. So you give me the idea, you give me the guidelines. Definitely, you are one of my mentors for starting this World Talent Economy Forum, and I just execute it, do the hard works, and then we get all of the support from around the world. And that time, Dr. Levy joined with us,
Wow.
with Professor Adrian. You know that we are organizing Nikola Tesla Technology Conference, and he's also chair with us. And it's actually huge response we are getting right now. And yeah,
Yeah.
definitely he is one of the great man and a
Yeah.
great chess player. I know you are also a chess player.
Oh, yeah,
I actually share your view with Dr. Levy. He's waiting to meet with you in
Yeah,
Dhaka.
well, I'm serious. When I learned to play by just reading books because we didn't have computers back then. And one of the books I picked up was his, and he was a prolific writer on chess books. One was The Sicilian Dragon, and there was two good authors that came from Great Britain, him and Dr. Nunn. And these guys were just brilliant in their writing. If you follow chess, and anybody who played a lot of chess would certainly know Dr. Levy and Dr. Nunn and their writings on chess books. So when I saw that he's on the forum with you, I fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe it. He's one of my
Okay.
heroes, and I'm going like, you got him on your TV show.
Yeah.
Now somebody's going to be on our show as the president of the European Parliament. The problem is nobody in the United States knows who the president of the European Parliament is. Half of us don't even know there is a European Parliament. So it's a big disconnect, as you know, Sharif, between the U.S. and the rest of the world. We kind of live on our own world over here.
But we have one solution for these developing nations and developed nation challenge. Maybe the developing nations and developed nation more closely they work together,
Right.
and we can help each other, and we can solve many problems both in developing nations and developed nations. We never know, maybe there are many entrepreneurs who want to invest in healthcare in USA, and they want to join in the USA healthcare ecosystem. Maybe this is one of the solutions. We are trying to do so, and I'm really happy that we are getting a lot of support, especially our social entrepreneur joining in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yes. Professor David Schumacher, what's your concluding remarks?
Well, once again, fine show, great panel as I spoke about. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. I'm enriched to hear your side of the conversation and to learn about Pod TV and how you've worked with Sharif in the past. So happy to participate, happy to use the technology, and I guess that's what we're talking about today. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. This is excellent session, especially for our audience. You know that we have lot of youth entrepreneurs, those who joining in World Talent Economy Forum Lab, those who joining in our ecosystems, uh, and I want to give special thanks. This is our 655 episode. Uh, that was not easy. Every week run the shows, but I want to give special thanks to our speakers. those who continuously join with us and support our projects. And trust me, you inspire a lot of people. I never think before I come back to Dhaka and India and everywhere, I never think people have so much of trust about World Talent Economy Forum. I want to give thanks to Port Televisions. I want to give thanks Transhumanist Party. I want to give thanks Dr. Talibs, all of the people, those who supporting in our projects, and all of the people. We try to engage with a lot of speakers, lot of people, both from left wing, right wing, whatever it is. But yes, we have some arguments, but in some point we have one objective. Everyone want human progressions. So that's create happiness in our life. I believe everybody's life. So if you are serious about human progressions, join in our projects, come to our Dhaka office, engage with people, do some projects. Hopefully, it will give you more happiness. Thank you, Professor Edward, Mr. David Schumacher, Dr. Talib Raphael, and Professor Nick Palveda for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, bye-bye, and take care.
Thank you, bye. Bye, thank you.
Where's the little button? There we go.